So, good evening, everybody. I hope that you are not so tired. So, yesterday, no, day before yesterday, we were going to the Nagarjuna's verses, and we were talking about patience, right? We are talking about patience. So, how to be patient in a general way. We talked about that, and how to be patient with our daily life, the problems that we face in our daily life, thinking about what the other, where the other people come from, why are they getting angry, thinking like that. You can have patience, but patience also is important when patience also is important when practicing also, right? You may think, why is patience important when practicing? It's important when practicing, and you think you practice for, let's say, 2-3 days, and say, I haven't gotten the benefit of my practice. You are not patient enough to practice long enough. So you can use patience in your practice also. So you may get impatient because of course we do not see the straight benefits of practicing just 5 to 10 minutes won't make you an enlightened one, or won't change your heart immediately, right? Like the afflictive emotions in us, like the anger and ego and wanting to gossip and etc., like that all we have been used to it for a long period of time, so it comes naturally, right? So for your practice to come naturally, you must also be patient with what you are practicing, and try to not just think that I have practiced for 1 year or 1 month or 1 day, but nothing changed in me. It doesn't happen like that, right? It's not like something you do and you just get right now. If you break something, if you want to break this, if you throw it, it will just break. It's not like that. So you have to practice for a long term to see the benefits of your practice. That of course shows in our great teachers, great practitioners from previous, that we have seen, who have practiced a lot, and we can see in their life how joyous they are, right? They don't have so much tension. We can see through a lot of practitioners. So having patience is really important. Whatever work you do, have patience with your boss and etc., like that. So that was the last sessions what I talked about in a short form. So today we'll go through verse number 10, I think. Yeah, verse number 10. 10 and 11 are together. When one eschews harm, thievery, sexual intercourse, falsehood, liquor, the desire for untimely food, delight in a high seat, song, dance, various forms of jewelry, and takes on these 8 precepts in emulation of Arihant's moral practice, that is posada, which bestows on both men and women the appealing body of a desired deity. So this is basically what it's saying, that even though being a layperson, you cannot follow exactly as a monk follows, right? You cannot follow that, because monks' vows have a lot of things that usual people have to do. But even if you cannot do that, you can take out 1 day as an example, right? Practice all this. There are 8 what do we say? 8 precepts, 8 precepts that you can practice for just 1 day. It's called observing upaswa, right? It's called observing upaswa. So in that one day, you can all come together as a community and practice not talking and not harming for one full day, and not taking untimely. This is actually not upaswa, but it's same as upaswa. This is almost the same, but the intention that you have before doing this is that you must think of, I'm doing this for the benefits of others. You may think you're not harming or taking life. Of course, that's not. In that day, even if you are non-vegetarian, you can be vegetarian at that day, right? For one day, just for one day. For example, we have like the Buddha coming from the to test us heaven day, and exactly like that, or the full moon day, right? Full moon on the half moon. At that point of time, which is supposed to be auspicious, we can practice this all at that time. Even if you are non-vegetarian, say that you remain vegetarian for one day, right? Sometimes we do that usually, so we can apply it to our practice also. Like if you are feeling that you are not going to have non-veg today, you can just apply it to your practice, thinking today, the time that I have not taken non-veg, may it benefit. You are not eating something, right? So you are actually benefiting them. So that's what this means. So taking upaswa is a point of practice where it will help you experience what the Buddha has said. Suffering, of course, when you feel hungry, you will suffer a little. So at that point of time, when you observe upaswa, when you feel hungry type of, you may think of it as you're practicing something. You're practicing something. You may think of this suffering and practice the tonglen, right, which is called the art of giving and taking, the art of giving your bliss to somebody else and taking their pain upon you, feeling that the hunger that I have felt may the people who are hungry not have to be hungry again. There is a saying of Buddha saying the mind is everything, what we think we become, right? So exactly, if we think like that, even though we may not be able to eradicate hunger and famine from the world, we may have a small effect, right? So each individual doing that creates a big effect. So even though it's not a big effect, we may think like that. If each and every individual works towards it, it will become a big effect, right? As the example I gave on the first day, like the broomstick. With one strand of stick, you are not able to clean much. But with many strands of broomsticks, you are able to clean more, right? So that analogy applies here also. So that's the thing that you should do. And untimely food, a high seat which is more than a cubic in height. So you must refrain from doing this. It's not saying every day, but just for one day. These 8 precepts that have been told here, like the harm, thievery, and etc. All these 8 precepts, if you count them, they are 8, right? So if you not do it in one day, you can think of it in your practice. May it benefit others. So that's the way that they are talking about. So singing, okay, so the shortcoming of having untimely food, do you know what untimely food means? Untimely foods mean even if you are not hungry, you are just eating it for the taste, to feel the taste of it, right? To feel the taste of it, how it tastes, and so on like that. Even though you are not hungry, you are just eating out of, what do we say, the attachment for the taste. That type of, that is what's called untimely food. Not, not eating out of necessity, but eating out of attachment. Of course, if you feel hungry, then if you are eating, then we are eating for our survival, right? So that we don't pass away. If we don't, if we don't eat for a long time, of course we are going to pass away. So that untimely food doesn't benefit us in any way. It just, we are just indulging in our desire. The desire, when we say desire, the English word desire is too broad. Because in Tibetan, the word desire, the afflictive emotion, desire, is an attachment to that thing, right? Attachment, type of attachment to that thing. There can be, you can have a desire to attain Buddhahood, right? That's also a type of desire, but it's not the desire that's the afflictive emotion. So even if we remain for one day doing that, we can have benefits. Also, you can think of the shortcomings of having many jewelries and etc. like that. You may lose your life because of your jewelry, can't you? Suppose somebody saw you wearing that big heavy jewelry and they may want to rob you, right? They may want to rob you and you may lose your life of that time. So I'm not saying that you should not wear. So even if it's for 1-2 days, you're not indulging in these acts will leave an imprint of you being able to refrain from indulging in those acts again. So these types of acts, the verse 10 and 11 are usually saying that, actually saying that. So we go to the verse 12. Verse 12 is this: view as enemies greed, cunning and deceit, attachment, idleness, haughtiness, lust and hearted, conceit from greatness of family, physical appearance, learning, health and authority. So we must view as enemies all this, of course. Greed is an enemy which is not letting us be satisfied, right? Instead, we must not think of somebody else as our enemy, but we must think our own emotions. These emotions are which cause us, so even though at a little point of time it may seem satisfactory, but when you indulge in it too much, it will only cause us more suffering, right? If you have greed, you are not satisfied with anything, you won't have a, what do we say? You won't have a calm state of mind if you are so greedy. So, and hiding your wrongs, right? When somebody criticizes you, you should take it, you should be taking it as an opportunity to improve yourself, right? That's one thing that you should do. When somebody, we like to hide our wrongs, right? When somebody says, you did wrong, oh, I did not do it, we try to hide it. And even though we have not attained something or done something good, we like to act like we have done good so much, right? That's just the outward showing that we like to have. Even if you show, it's just a lie that you are doing, right? So it's a part of lie if you say that you have done something good even though you have not done something good. So that's the main thing that we should view as enemies. Also attachment of course, idleness, being lazy. Idleness is laziness, it's almost same, right? Being lazy makes your work stops your work from progressing, stop yourself from progressing and all. So also this conceit from greatness of family, physical appearance, learning, health and authority. This means your ego, right? Your ego of, if you are born in a royal family, if you are born in a wealthy family, you may think, I'm born in a wealthy family, I'm better than those low lives, right? So we may have a thinking like that. So it's saying, if you think like that, eventually it's going to harm yourself. So this type of thinking are your enemy. Also, you may think, I'm so young, I have a nice physical body, I'm masculine, or so on, right? And be proud of that, be egoistic of that. That's also an enemy. In the short term, it may feel like, you may feel the, when you are egoistic, you feel a sense of something filling up from here, right? You feel something like it's from inside. I'm telling this from my own experience. There, in debate, actually, there are times that sometimes you feel egoistic, but debate is actually a good ego crusher. Like when you think you know so much, when you go to debate and all, sometimes your ego gets crushed because your debate partners, they may have seen something that you may have not seen, and your answerings may not be very good. So they will use logic. Logic is very important because it makes you as if you can't go anywhere. So you have to go to the right way. So that crushes your ego in a way. So I have had that experience of having an egoistic feeling and getting it crushed also. But if you think that if you are so egoistic that of course we don't like sitting near an egoistic person, right? If somebody is always I am that, I am this, then you will feel type of, what do we say, not uneasiness, you'll feel type of what do we say, suffocating when you are near them, right? And you would want to go more far away from them. So these are the things that we should regard as enemies. So when we think of egoistic, when we are being so egoistic, we are just, how do you feel when you feel egoistic? You feel as if I am the only one who is the best, right? There's this type of feelings, because we have, of course we don't know how Buddhas and all feels, but this type of feelings, because we have in our own mind, we have anger, lust, and ego, and everything we have, right? We are experiencing it now. So we must analyze how they work. When we are feeling that, at that point of time, are we feeling really good? When that feeling is arising, of course you cannot analyze at that point of time, but you know that feeling, right? So you must, whenever you look at it, you must look from a different vantage point, as we say it. You must have a vantage point that you look on these feelings and how they what do you say, engage on the object of their how they engage on their objects, right? Suppose when you are feeling ego, you are feeling I'm the best at that time, nobody is above me. Then if you see something above, somebody above better than you, you will feel jealousy, right? So ego also causes jealousy and so on. But when you are feeling egoistic, there is one thing that you are also feeling. At that time when you are feeling the sense of I, you are feeling that sense of I as independent I, right? Independent I, that somewhere here, maybe you'll feel somewhere here, the I that is so strong. Even when you are angry, and even when you are in some type of afflictive emotions, right? You have a strong sense of I at that point of time. That's the strongest. When you are afraid also, I have to run. That when you get afraid also, right? At that point of time, we have a strong sense of I, which when we look at that I, the how it engages in its objects, at that point of time we'll know that it's thinking itself as a independent, right? But are we independent? No, right? We may say we are independent, but we are not independent. We are dependent on all the things. Even I'm dependent on the living beings of this world, right? Of course, I'm dependent on the farmer that grew the rice so that I can eat it, right? I'm dependent on the farmer who grew the grew the vegetables so that I can eat it. And I'm also dependent on the persons that made the house so that I can live in it. Also, we are dependent on a lot of factors, right? We are dependent on a lot of things. So when we analyze, when we are not feeling that, at the point of feeling that egoistic type, we cannot see clearly, so we won't be able to. But when you are not feeling it, you can analyze from a vantage point, a different type of mind, analyzing what that mind is thinking. So it's important that you analyze how your mind is working, the workings of your mind. The before Nalanda masters, they were great scholars of external things, but they are also great masters of the inner workings of our mind. That's how even Buddha, right? Even Buddha, he was great at our inner workings because he was analyzing every emotion that's taking place. Suppose the type of when you are angry, when you are gossiping, or when you are attached to something. Okay, let's just say you are attached to this mug, right? I am attached to this mug. I will say, I want this mug. And this is my mug. And I'll have these types of emotions and aspects of my thinking towards it, right? When somebody breaks this mug, then because I have a so strong feeling of being independent and such a what do we say, egoistic approach that I'm independent than him, that makes us get angry. Suppose it makes us think he is hurting me, right? He is hurting my friends. He is hurting me right now. He is going to hurt me next time. He has hurt me before. We tend to think of all these reasons to get angry, right? And he is causing me harm. And if somebody else is helping your enemy, you tend to think, he is helping my enemy now. We tend to use these reasons. He may have helped him before. He may help him next time. So we tend to get angry because of these reasons. Anger and attachment come from the thinking that arises from the mind that we think as independent I, the Could you repeat? I couldn't get. The thinking of I, the, what do we say, self-grasping mind as we say it, self-grasping mind as we say it, we tend to grasp at it a lot, right? So that's one thing that also we call it, it's a part of ignorance. It's part of ignorance. We are so ignorant. If we have the strong feeling that we are dependent on all of the beings, even though you may not be able to fully control your anger or attachment, we would have a sense of control, right? Not fully, but because we have that strong belief of being dependent on everybody, we'll have that type of, what do you say, type of control over it. So being egoistic also, these two are the strongest, what do you say, opposites of these afflictive emotions. Trying to understand the dependent I, right? We can't understand it properly. When we look at it, you will feel as if, when we analyze it from a logical point, we can think, this hand is not me. Do you think your hand is you? No, you are not you. Then when we try to point it inside and more inside, who do you think, where do you think the I is? Where do you think it is? We may point here, right? But when we try to see how we feel about the I, you will feel that it's as if something that's round, something that's independent. You will have that type of feeling. You should later try to point where is the I. So that's one of the things that's causing us many afflictive emotions. Also, compassion. Practicing compassion also helps us not be so egoistic, not be so angry, right? And not be so attached also. Compassion, of course, true compassion, when we think of true compassion, there is no, like, what do we say? There is no wanting back, right? If I give something to you, I don't want it. I don't want something from you. So being compassionate is also very important. If you are compassionate enough, even your patience will grow, right? Even you being generous, all the generous will grow. Your practice of generosity will also grow. You may ask how, right? What is compassion, by the way? What is compassion? First we must ask, to be compassionate, first we must know the emotion of compassion, right? What's compassion? So the compassion. So when we think of compassion, how do you define compassion? Compassion is something that focuses more on the other person, and think of elevating their, wishing of elevating their, what do we say? Wishing of elevating their suffering, right? Wishing of elevating their suffering. That's compassion. There is a difference between empathy and compassion. There should be a difference. First we must ask, what's empathy, right? What is empathy? Empathy is something that when you see somebody feeling that pain, you feel a little of that pain. Suppose you see somebody breaking their leg, right? At that point, I have that experience, so when you see somebody breaking their leg, you'll have, or breaking their hand or so, you'll have type of itchiness around the area where that person has broken their leg, if you are empathic enough, right? So empathy is a way to compassion. It's a pathway, it's a cause of compassion, but it's not compassion. It's Empathy is you focusing more on the pain than on the individual wish of other, elevating the other from the pain, right? So you must differentiate between these two. So if you focus more on the, you may get tired. If you focus more on the pain part, you may get tired, right? Of course, you may get tired because if you are so empathic that you feel the other people pain, then we see that in mothers, don't we? Mothers have that type of empathy towards their children. I could say so. I think so. Maybe I could say I know so. Because I remember the time when I had a migraine. Actually, I had been going out in the sun, and when I came back, I had a bad migraine. And at point of time, it was around night, 2 a.m. So I was having a very bad migraine. So at that point of time, because it was the first time that I ever had migraine, so it was very painful. At that time, my mother, I remember her doing that. Of course, she's not a doctor and all, because I was telling her that I only feel this. I didn't even know what migraine was at that point of time. I was only feeling pain from this side. I was not feeling pain on this side. And my mother, it was as if she was feeling the pain herself and coming near me and trying to soothe me, and herself getting tired, right? So, and as I had told you before, my mother is like, follows all the religion, and I could hear her praying to Indian gods, Christian gods, Tibetan gods. I could hear her praying all that. I could still remember that day, wishing, what's happening to my kid? Please let my kid become better. And I was also vomiting, I think. So that's the type of, if you focus more on that, empathy, right, the pain, you will get eventually tired. But my mom, at that point of time, I think she was more compassionate, right? It's a genuine feeling of wishing to elevate the other's pain. Compassion is something, it's like that, right? So we may say we have compassion, we may say practice compassion, we may feel it for a little, but it must be a genuine type of feelings towards that certain person. Of course, towards our family members, we may have a more sense of compassion than others, right? Of course, as in the example of my own experience, my mother had more that. So compassion is, actually we all may have experience, right? But we don't know right now. Compassion is like so compassion is a complex emotion. We couldn't explain it properly, but we know that it's there, right? So the thing is, what I'm trying to say is, even if in your family, if everybody, family and friend, if everybody is compassionate towards each other, there will be lesser arguments in family and friends, right? If you are compassionate enough, suppose you have let's say, a child who has gone out and is not coming back at, let's say, 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You have a child who is doing that. Then when the father or the mother or the parent, they may get angry, right? They may get angry. But that angriness, there may be two types of angriness that comes. One is the angriness that may come from your ego, right? That may come from your ego. When you are being a parent, actually I'm not qualified to teach you to be a parent, but I think, I think I can tell you that because I have students who are small, and when they get naughty or so on, I actually understood that there were two types of emotions that arose. When I'm egoistic, there's one anger that comes from that, right? There's one anger that comes from that, thinking he's not following the set of rules that I have set for him. And he's not, that's more focused on the I, right? It's getting more focused on the I and not focusing on them. But when the anger, or not anger, let's say, where the care for them not doing exactly and we thinking it's going to affect them in their later lives, arises from compassionate side, then you won't feel that much of anger because it's genuinely caring for them, right? But if you have an egoistic point of view, thinking they are not following the set of rules that I have set them, then we have a problem there, right? Because it's coming from an egoistic point of view, not a compassionate point of view. So it's also happening like that. When you are compassionate enough, you may also gain more patience, because when you are compassionate enough, you have the capacity to let's say, try to think of where that person is coming from, right? Suppose your boss calls you. Okay, suppose in companies are there like 3 types of stages. One could be the boss, manager, and director, or CEO. Okay, so CEO scolds your boss who is senior than you, and that boss scolds you, right? If you are compassionate enough, you may be understanding enough to know that the boss had a bad day with the CEO, and that's why you are having a bad day. So you can, if you are compassionate enough, you can have that type of thinking, right? So, or you can practice compassion towards them. You can be compassionate with your boss, right? Then you won't feel the need to get tired of your work, get angry with your work. So being compassionate is very important, right? Actually, if you practice these two, compassion and practice of analyzing whether there is an independent I, and when you realize that there is not, these two practice may help you become everything. Become everything. I'm not saying become everything, but become generous, become patient, right? Become patience. Now I'm talking in a little bit Tibetan, saying Rewa, isn't it? So that's the thing. So being compassionate also may help you be less. If you are a violent person, it may help you become less violent, right? So these are the, of course, these are the benefits of being compassionate. And whereas if you are the opposite of compassionate, where you want harm to others for everything, then of course we have seen that, right? Even if you are a king, if you are controlling your subjects through violence, then the subjects will start to revolt, right? As we say, they may start to stage a coup d'état, is it? Yeah. They may start to stage a coup. So these types of different benefits are in the short term also. Like if you are compassionate enough, your subjects will love the king who is compassionate, thinks of others than himself, rather than the king who is so selfish and is controlling them through violence. So you may think of that also. So also you may think like this, you being on a vantage point, right? You have the choice to help two types of person. You are not any these two types. One person is selfish and growing a farm so that he can eat himself. He's not going to share with anybody, right? And there's another person who is doing the same work, but he has the thinking to help others, and to give food to the persons that don't have food, for the benefits of others. So of these two persons, you are looking from a vantage point. You have the choice to help either this or this. So who would you help? The other one. You may help the other one. If you help this one, you are helping you are wasting your energy in a way, because he won't share his harvest with you also, right? But if you are helping that person, you may be thinking of a beneficial point of view, but if you think like that, you are not helping the selfish one, whereas you are helping the one who thinks of the benefits for others, right? So now you are the selfish one who is sowing the for farm. Then there's somebody else who is doing help that. At that, if you are on that person's seat, you think, I'm doing the right thing, right? At that point of time, you would be thinking, you would not be thinking, I'm selfish, but you would be thinking, I'm doing the right thing. I'm saving so much for myself, and so on. If you are so self-centered, then of course, attachment towards yourself, wanting more for yourself, also grows. So it's also a way to lessen attachment, right? So what has changed? When I gave you the two examples, what has changed? Like, when you look from a vantage point, you are thinking of benefiting the others that who are right. But when you become the selfish person, your perspective changes, right? Doesn't it? Your perspective changes, and when you become the person, you are thinking more of I and me and mine, right? So that becomes more selfish. So we must think like that. Also, we must think of different perspectives to practice compassion. Of course, you can practice like this. First, practicing self-compassion, which is like to elevate your all suffering, may I attain peace, and so on. Then slowly towards your family, right? Slowly towards your family, then slowly towards somebody you don't like, example, your boss, who you may not like, and slowly towards your enemy. First, it's very important to have self-compassion, and after that, it's to your families, and generally expand to the all living beings, and so on, right? So that's the way you can practice compassion. But we rely so much on compassion, don't we? From the time that we are born, if our parents weren't compassionate enough, they may have given you to an orphanage, right? If they were not compassionate enough to keep you, they may have given you to an orphanage. And what would have been your plight at that point of time? So we need compassion in our lives. It's one of the ways that we could deal with loneliness and everything like that. So I talked about perspective. Perspective is a funny thing. Perspective is really funny thing. When you think something is right, that's the only right there is. You don't think of much logic, right? What I think is right, what I do is right. We have that type of perspective. So Actually, Buddha has said something which is very interesting. We are shaping our own world, right? We are shaping our own world. What does that mean? We are giving our own reasons. We think this is going to happen because of this is going to happen because of this. We are giving our own reasons and we are shaping it, right? And of course, two persons, they may have the same perspective, but they may have the different perspective, right? Suppose let's give the example of durian. Most of the people here may like durian, but from my perspective, who has never had durian, it gives me migraines. So, from my perspective, right, the durian is not tasty and super smelly. Right, from my perspective, someone who has not even had durian and all, but from your perspective, it's the king of the fruits, isn't it? From your perspective, is that. So it's super tasty, and I heard some of the monks saying, when they smell of durian, their mouth waters to wanting to eat that. Does that happen to you all? Yeah? So, when I smell of durian, I try to run away. So, we have a different perspective of the durian, right? So, we cannot say your perspective is wrong, can we? Can we say that? You thinking of durian as a delicious object, and me thinking of a delicious object that I dislike and it's not tasty, it's not delicious, it's disgusting for me, right? So, the durian itself, right? Durian itself, is it really delicious or non-delicious? What do you think? Of course, we will have more. Of course, we will have more persons who say it's delicious here. But if I bring more persons from India, they'll say, then we would have a competition, right? Some say it's delicious, some say it's not delicious. So, you having been born here and having been exposed to the durian from a small age and so on, has made it so delicious for you, right? For your mind and everything like that. For me, who has never been exposed to it, it's making my mind more not liking to it. So Buddha has said that we are shaping our own world. But we cannot say these both perspectives are wrong, can we? So we tend to ask the question, what is the durian? Is the durian tasty? If it's really tasty, then it should be tasty to all the people, isn't it? Should it be? Shouldn't it be? If it's really tasty, something that's really tasty, it should be tasty to all of us, not just the ones who are used to it, but also to the persons who are not used to it. So perspective also matters when you are compassionate. When you are being more compassionate, you tend to understand where that person's perspective is, right? And when you understand that person's perspective and the reasons behind it, you will be more understanding towards it. So perspective also matters. So the example of durian, we'll go more into it later. That's a point of, okay, I'll just give you a question to think upon. Is the durian really tasty or not tasty? That's the question that I'll give for you to think upon, and we'll talk about it later. So being compassionate is really helpful for yourself and of course for everything. So we'll go to the verse number 13 and 14. The Muni declared mindfulness the way of immortality and heedlessness the way of death. Thus, constantly practice mindfulness with respect in order to develop virtuous dharmas. Beautiful as the moon, freed of clouds, is the formerly heedless one become mindful, akin to Nanda, Angulimala, Ajasatru, and Udayana. So this is saying being mindful of your actions, right? This is saying to be mindful of your actions. If you are mindful enough of your... Yesterday I think we had a question. I could not practice much, I'm forgetting. So this is what it's saying. Being mindful of your actions and be mindful of your actions by writing. That's one of the practices that usually someone who is forgetful can do, writing on their hand and being mindful. When they think of it, be mindful of your actions, they could remind themselves, right? So that's one of the practices that you should do. And being mindful, of course, is important for every bit of action. You may think you are doing good, but you may do it also unknowingly, like even though you know it's bad, you may do it unknowingly. So being mindfulness, to develop a more understanding of virtue, it's important that you have mindfulness, right? And beautiful as when the moon is covered with clouds, it's you not being mindful and heedless, right? So akin to Nanda Angul, these are like examples of you should not be depressed that you are not mindful enough right now, right? You could work towards being mindful from now. Being mindful, talking about mindfulness will, of course you know more about being mindful, so I won't talk much about that. Akin to Nanda Angulimala, so I won't tell all of... Nanda was a monk who had so much love for his wife that even after he became a monk, he drew a drawing on the wall and used to cry and just like that. But Buddha taught him the way of being mindful and showed him the way. After that, he became mindful of his actions and was not attached to his wife and so on. Angulimala is the one you may have heard stories of, the one cutting the 1,000, I think 1,000, yeah, 1,000 fingers, and because he was not mindful of his actions, and he did his actions. Also, he is an example of how your guru devotion should be, right? Because if you follow wrong gurus, they may lead you to a wrong path. Angulimala is an example of a guru leading not a guru, let's not say a guru, but his guru leading him to a wrong path, and Buddha saving him from that path. So that is one example. And Ajasatru is the one that killed his father. There was a prince that killed his father, and that because he was not mindful enough. So Udayana is one who kills his mother. So all this, even though they killed their father and mother and committed a great sin, they can become mindful and be freed of the clouds that engulf them, right? So it's saying that. So that's all. I'll go to the verses a little because we don't have much time now. So number 15 and 16. There is no austerity like patience, so do not give way to anger. By overcoming anger, the Buddha acknowledged one attains the stage of non-return. This person insulted me. This one struck or overwhelmed me. This one stole my heart, stole my wealth. Such resentment generates conflict. Who abandons resentment sleeps easily, right? So this is because this is actually saying what the thing that I had said yesterday. Be patient and try to practice patience in every point of view, not only like you thinking you are practicing patience, but be patient with your family, friends, and boss, and etc. like that. Also, we tend to give way to anger by giving so much reason to it, right? By thinking this person insulted. That time I told you, right? We have a sense of independent I, So we think that I is independent, and that because of that we think this person insulted me. Me and I are the same. So this person insulted me. This person stole my wealth, and we tend to give way to the anger, right? So we must learn, the root of every afflictive emotion arising is the thing that we have. If you, the self-grasping mind, as we call it, and also the sense of there being an independent I, we have that mindset, which is a default state that we have. If we realize that it's not easy to realize. We must realize it through many analytical and many meditative means. But once we realize that, because you had taken out the root, right? If you take out the root from a tree, it won't grow. But if you just cut a branch, because the root is there, the branch may grow. So the root of this afflictive emotions arising is us having the sense of an independent I, which is not there. It's an interdependent I. So it's I that exists only as a label, right? So this is more into the emptiness side, which gets more and more complex. So that's one way that you could practice to reduce your anger and all. So that's what it means, like have patience for everything. So number 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay. Understand thoughts as being like figures drawn in water, earth and stone. For an afflicted state of mind, the first is the best, with an aspiration for the Dharma, the last. So it's actually telling you how to practice Dharma, right? It's telling you how to practice Dharma. Suppose we write something, we draw something on a water, it won't stay, right? If we draw a circle, it will just go away. It won't stay. And if we draw something on a earth, it may remain for a certain point of time, but it will go away. But if you have written something, drawn something on a stone, it will stay for a very long point of time, right? So exactly like that, our afflictive emotions, negative emotions like anger and so on, we must learn to control them as a figure drawn on water. Like keep them even if they come, keep them for a short period of time and just let it go, right? Suppose you have anger towards somebody, and we tend to build upon that anger and create resentment, right? And even though the anger, we had a verbal argument and I am angry towards you, and if we leave it just at that, that's okay. But we tend to do this. We go back in our home and think, my boss scolded me like this, and at that point of time, while she was scolding, all her spit was on my face. And think of each and every detail and try to pile upon it, right? We try to pile upon it, and it creates resentment. But instead, what this is saying, even if anger occurs, if you just keep it on drawn on a water, a figure drawn on the water, just keep it for a while, just not even a while, just at the moment you may get angry, but let it go, let it be swept away. Whereas when you do a good action, that should be as you have written on a stone, right? When you write on a stone, it will stay for a long time. When you have a good emotion like compassion or so on, you must try to give it as much as time and enlarge that, cultivate that emotion. So it's basically saying that the Jaina declared a person's speech as being of three types: pleasing, truthful, and improper, like honey, a flower, and filth. The last should be abandoned, and first should be adopted. Actually, This is that. So the Buddha, what he's actually saying, when we talk about somebody, and so on, we must speak like honey, meaning we must speak sweetly, right? Gently, right? Even if you speak to a beggar or so on, you must speak gently like honey, and not like filth, meaning without respect and etc. so on, right? So being speech as three types: pleasing, truthful is okay. So improper, you must not speak improperly. You must speak like honey, meaning gently. Okay, so that's that. So these three verses. Person are of four types: those who go from light to and reach end of light, from darkness to end of darkness, from light to darkness, and darkness to light. Be like the first of them. Meaning, we are all persons, right? But we tend to go more from lightness to dark. Meaning, if we are doing a virtuous good, we tend to go negative, right? We tend to go negative and indulge more in the non-virtuous act. So the first one is going from light to light, which is going from virtuous actions to virtuous actions, right? And the person's going from light to darkness, right? First is what? Light and reach end of light, darkness to end of darkness. Person, from the time they were born, they indulged in killing and etc. so on, and went on to end their life with killing, right? And light to darkness is, we have the danger of being that. Right now, even we are indulging in good acts and so on, but we may go to the bad acts, right? We may be indulged more in stealing, and first, even though we were not stealing, we may be indulged in stealing at a later point of our time, right? So that's what it's saying. From darkness to light, we can also be, if you are right now a lying person, not only for stealing and killing, but also gossiping and divisive speech and harsh words, and if you are using that, you are in that darkness, right? From that darkness, you can go to the light, which is having a gentle speech and not gossiping and not having divisive speech and so on. So that's, be like the first of them. If you are indulging in good karmas, you must indulge from good to good, not good to bad. It's basically saying that. So people should be understood as being like a mango fruit. Okay, there are unripe ones which seem ripe, ripe ones which seem unripe, unripe which appear unripe, and unripe and ripe appearing ripe. Nagarjuna is really a good user of words. So what's this basically saying is the mango, right? From the outside, we can see it as being there are unripe ones. Yeah, it's not ripe from the inside. It's not ripe from the inside, but from the outside, it's yellow and seems right. That is basically saying, from the outside, you are very good, acting very good, and from the inside, you are thinking bad of everybody. Why is this person more wealthy than me? Why can't I be more wealthy than them? Why is this person more famous than them? But when they meet together, they'll say, "Oh, you are very famous, very nice." So that's what that means. Unripe from the inside, but which seem ripe. When we look at her outwards actions, it seems as if, wow, this person is a very good person, but inside, it's unripe. So that's that. And ripe ones which seem unripe, right? So ripe ones which seem unripe is people who are good from the inside, but don't know how to express themselves and may come off as being more straightforward and harsh-worded. There are people like that, right? who have the goodest of intentions and who are very good at heart, but their actions may be not suitable to the eye, which may cause us to think that they are not good. So which are good from the heart, but their actions, like the way that they look and the actions that they have seem unripe, right? Unripe, which appear unripe, this is the easiest one. The one who is rotten from the inside and also rotten from the inside, but also outside actions are also not good. Unripe, which seem unripe, this is the easiest. Ripe, appearing ripe, which is also easy. One who is very good from the inside and outside also. So this is what this text basically means. Okay, so I think I should stop here and ask for questions. Okay. Yeah. So the summary, okay, sorry. The summary is basically be compassionate, right? And even if you are in a terrible situation, think what will be the most compassionate way way out of it, right? Suppose your boss is scolding you, and you may think, what's the most compassionate way out of it, right? You may be smiling. If you smile, but there is also the danger of the boss thinking, is she mocking me? Right? There's the danger of also that. But be careful on the situation and think which may be the more reasonable and the compassionate way of going through this. So that's the simplest summary that I can give. And when you practice compassion, first have a compassion for yourself and try to cultivate it to your families, then slowly to persons that you don't have any feeling towards, a person you know, but you may not even know somebody who is passing by and not have similar feelings, the person who is on a equal feeling time, and then slowly advance towards your enemies, right? If you have enemies. So that's the basic summary.
Okay, so any questions? Yeah, I thought you raised your hand. No? You have a question? Yes?
Hi. So talking about the durian, so you say that your perspective is smelly, okay? So would it be better if you try to eating more of it, like getting the perspective of the other person? So if you eat more of the durian, then you may appear to like it.
Okay. So actually you have pondered upon the question. I actually try to eat more of it and try to familiarize myself with the smell, but it's not happening, so I don't know if I have the taste buds for it. But even then, that's me training myself, right? That's me giving more reasons for my perspective to change, right? Right now, my perspective is that it's not tasty, and there may be a lot of people who think that it's not tasty, right? I actually heard a story that a Westerner fainted. Is it true? I don't know whether it's true or not. Westerner fainted because of the smell, and that type of perspective, right? They think, I also think, that durian is not delicious, but durian itself, its inherent, let's say, its own self, if we left it without perspective, is it really delicious or is it really not delicious? That was the question that I had. So what do you think about it? Is it delicious?
I think it's depending on the person who is going to eat it.
So yeah, that's the point that I was trying to bring across is lot of things, lot of our reality, as we call it, depends on the perspective we have, right? You have the perspective, my reality, my mind has formed a reality where durian is not tasty, durian is smelly, and so on. But your mind has formed a reality where the durian is super tasty and so delicious to eat. So what I'm saying is, everything is dependent, right? Most of the things, even though we may think something is bad and all, there is a perspective to it, isn't there? Suppose I think the durian is bad, so I'll give you my reasons, right? I'll give you my reasons, my perspective of how I view it. And when you say it's very delicious, you'll give your reasons and your perspective of it. So in actual durian, it seems neither it's delicious or non-delicious. It is dependent upon the perspective of the person who is going to eat it, right? So exactly like that, the thing was, this durian example was to go back to the compassion part. Exactly like that, the thing that we have, the perspective of I, right? The independent I. We have the perspective right now, it's in mostly all of us who has not practiced emptiness and so on. We have the perspective that the I is independent. We may say from our mouth that I is dependent or so on, but from our deepest bottom of the heart, we have the, what do we say? We have the perspective that I is independent. So when we change that perspective is of course wrong, because you are not independent. I'm not saying you are not independent as in you cannot stand on your own legs, or you are not free from anything, or not that, but dependent on others. It's not inherent in his own existence, right? So it's dependent that when we can try to think of ourselves as angry. When we are angry, that we can try to arouse that emotions and look from a vantage point of our mind, looking at that emotion, what that type of, when we think that person hurt me, right? At that point of time, the me that you are saying, how is it we are looking at it? Are we looking at it as a dependent object or an independent object? We must look from a vantage point. So when we do that, we will realize that we are looking at that I as an independent. So I'm actually saying we must change that perspective, right? When we change that perspective and realize that I is dependent, if you go slowly on our own body, we will realize that I is dependent on our body, right? Is your body different than your I? That's the question we may ask. Is your body you? Is your hand you? Then we may go more and more deep and analytical about it and go to the atom side, right? We will have atoms in our body, and we go to the smallest atom and think whether this small atom is me. Of course, you cannot say your heart is you. Is it you? That's the question I will ask. Is it you? Is your heart you? If your heart is you, then how can, when we change, there's heart surgeries, right? You put somebody else, heart transplants. When you put somebody else heart into you, then you are changing. No, you are not changing. If your heart is you, that means you are changing. So where does this I that we point to reside? We must try to analyze and dissect that. And apparently we will realize that the I exists only as a label, and it is dependent on our all of the five aggregates together. Then we won't have that self-grasping mind, as we call it. It won't be that very strong, and we won't have that sense of I, which is strong. And if we don't have the sense that is strong of I, right, we don't have a sense of I that is strong, then we will slowly have less and less negative emotions. So the Durian question was just to try to come back to this point. That's what I was going to ask. So our perspective of the durian depends. It's dependent, right? Whether it's delicious or not. So exactly the perspective that we think our perspective it's independent. We must change that perspective to think that it's dependent. It's dependent on the causes, it's dependent on all our bodies, not one thing, but all of our bodies. So when we think of dependency, then you won't get that. Even though you may get a little angry at somebody, you won't have that resentment type of angriness towards the person. So that's the question. So actually yours was the answer, but I changed that answer to a, what do we say, a point.
Any other interesting questions? Yes, Eunice.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for the teaching. I'm not sure if this question sounds weird or not, but it just popped up to my mind. If someone were to say that he gives anger without attachment, what is Rinpoche's comment on this? Because giving is like generosity, then without attachment means non-attachment. But in this case, the object is anger.
Okay, he gives anger
without attachment.
He gives anger without attachment. So who is the he? First we must ask that a person, if that person is a bodhisattva, if that he who is giving anger without attachment, if the person he is a bodhisattva who has attained the path of seeing and all, they can control their anger. Even though anger is a negative emotion, they have the ability and capacity to transform it into something beneficial, right? They have the power to do that. So if the person is a bodhisattva, then that bodhisattva is giving without attachment. That makes sense, because without attachment meaning without attachment to the person, or through compassion, right? Without attachment, but through compassion, he's giving the anger, so that, of course, we have our parents who give us anger, right? Who show us anger when we don't do right and all. But that anger may come from two different parts. One is ego and one is compassion. The one that is coming through the compassion side is like that. The compassion side is wanting you to be better, right? Exactly like that. The Bodhisattva's anger giving without attachment is them giving you way through compassion, which is not attachment to themselves or not attachment to you, right? So it's that. But the giver of the anger, if he is a person like me who is not very practiced, if that person is like me, then I'm giving anger out of anger. Meaning I'm giving anger not out of attachment for other things, but when we get anger, we have some type of attachment, right? When we give anger, we have type of attachment. That attachment, we must again ask the question, what type of attachment are you talking about? Are you talking about attachment to the self or attachment to other, right? Of course, we can give anger without attachment to other, but it's a little bit hard to give anger without for the non-practice like us, it's hard to give anger without attachment. So giving exactly doesn't mean generosity. The act of giving somebody gave you a punch, right? That act is not generous. That act is not considered generous. But in a way, it can be translated into a generous, but that's not generous. Being generous means you have the capacity to give the things that you own without any miserly. While giving anger, of course you are not a miser, you give as much as you can. But it's a different type of emotion, so that's what. Okay.
Thank you.
Rinpoche, the question, you spoke about empathy, compassion, the question about bodhicitta.
Mm-hmm.
Bodhicitta, to me, it's very similar to compassion.
Mm-hmm.
There's, of course, contrite, bodhicitta, and spontaneous. Spontaneous is almost impossible sometimes to practice. So where does compassion come into the picture, where bodhicitta? Is it the same?
Okay. So actually, this goes more into the mental factors and all, because in the text, the bodhicitta is not a mental factor. It's a main mind, right? So it goes more into that. Compassion is a mental factor. It's called Ningje, which in the 51 mental factors, is one of the 51 mental factors. Bodhicitta itself is the main mind. So for you to understand this we must go more into the logic, which is like a different type. So I will just say compassion. First, you must have compassion, right? So compassion becomes, I'm not saying when you have bodhicitta you don't have compassion, but first compassion must come to you spontaneously. After that, you must have altruism. Is it altruism? Yeah. You must have altruism. Then after that, the non-spontaneous bodhicitta comes. And after that, we change it to the spontaneous bodhicitta. So if you look at it generally, the compassion becomes a cause for bodhicitta to arise. Because compassion and bodhicitta have different object of engagement, and they have different objects of engagement and so on, right? Bodhicitta, what it does is, it does think of elevating you from misery, but it also has different object of engagement, which is the, what do we say, enlightenment, right? Buddhahood. It has the object, as an object of engagement of the bodhicitta, it also engages the enlightenment. But this compassion only thinks of wishing of elevating the pain, but doesn't think of how, and doesn't have an engagement of thinking as this is the end to enlightenment, whereas the bodhicitta thinks of the final enlightenment as an object of engagement. So that's the difference between bodhicitta and compassion. Compassion is also a cause, but when you have bodhicitta, of course, you have compassion. These two are separate entities, but they can be one of essence. Compassion is one of the 51 mental factors, and bodhicitta is actually the main mind, and their object of engagement is also different. So these are the differences, slight differences that arises. Bodhicitta's object of engagement is enlightenment, right, for the sake of all other beings, whereas the compassion's object of engagement is your wishing to elevate the suffering. So that's the difference. Okay. Any else?
Any more? Yes, Joel.
Thank you, Rinpoche. On verse 18, why is it that only the filthy speech should be abandoned, but not the improper?
Verse number which?
18.
18. The Jinnah Drigling Post.
Only the last should be abandoned, but what about improper?
No. The last meaning they are saying they are what?
There are three types.
3 types. The pleasing is like honey.
Oh, okay.
Pleasing is like an analogy. Pleasing like honey, and truthful like a flower, and improper like filth. So improper and filth both should be abandoned, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's just an analogy that it's giving. It's not saying that you must not abandon the improper, but it's talking in an analogy ways.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more? No?
Okay. So that should be it.
Okay.
Okay.
So we will do dedication.
Okay.